here, let me take you through the math.
Yes.
Some of our parts went from 0 tariff to 140% tariff. We have to import certain parts. And a lot of parts like fasteners, washers, carpet, wiring looms are just not available. We can't even buy those parts here.
Ford isn't just pausing production. According to multiple leaked memos, the automaker is now preparing to move entire electric vehicle platforms out of the United States. While not officially confirmed, insiders claim Ford executives are weighing a full relocation of their EV operations to Canada and Mexico, quietly shifting development, manufacturing, and final assembly away from U.S. soil. The reason? Tariffs. And not the kind that target foreign competitors, but ones that are now hammering Ford's most strategic divisions. This isn't just a policy ripple. It's a strategic earthquake. For over a century, Ford has been a symbol of American labor, muscle, and innovation. But this new development, if true, would signal something far more dangerous than factory shutdowns. It would signal a permanent retreat. In recent days, whispers inside Detroit have grown louder. R&D teams reassigned. Product launches shelved. Engineers moved across borders. These actions suggest that Ford may not be waiting for Washington to fix the tariff crisis. They're adapting fast, and their adaptation could mean thousands more American jobs lost. So here's the question. Is this just a tactical move? Or is Ford preparing to leave even more of America behind for good? This story isn't over. In fact, it's just beginning. And what happens next could reshape the future of the U.S. auto industry. The factory closures were just the opening shot. Inside Ford's headquarters in Dearborn, a much darker conversation is unfolding, and it's not in any press release. According to two sources close to the company, Ford has frozen all major U.S. vehicle development projects for the rest of 2025. That includes next-generation models of the Escape and Edge, both previously scheduled for retooling and relaunch this fall. Behind the scenes, engineers assigned to these projects are being quietly relocated to Canadian and Mexican divisions. Some teams, according to internal emails reviewed by auto analysts, were given just 2 weeks' notice to shift development cycles across the border. But that's not all. Procurement managers have already tripled their overseas parts orders, shifting production contracts from Michigan-based vendors to suppliers in Vietnam, Taiwan, and Eastern Europe. In one case, a plant in Kentucky lost a $22 million contract to a facility outside Guadalajara. And when asked why, the answer was simple: tariffs. Ford's internal finance briefings now include a new term, structural offload. It refers to the process of separating operations likely to remain in the U.S. from those being strategically reassigned to avoid tariff penalties. And here's the twist. Despite public statements of confidence, senior executives are actively preparing two parallel contingency plans, one of which includes a scenario where over 40% of North American production occurs outside the United States by 2027. It's not a press statement. It's a blueprint for survival, and it's already in motion. The effects of Ford's shutdown weren't limited to factory gates. They rippled across America's industrial backbone like a shockwave. In the 3 weeks following the initial closures, more than 18,000 workers across Ford's supplier network lost their jobs. These aren't just assembly line workers. They're toolmakers in Ohio, logistics crews in Indiana, and third-party electronics builders in Illinois, all suddenly out of work. One major supplier based in Lansing, Michigan, filed for bankruptcy after Ford canceled a $16 million contract for dashboard components. That supplier had been in business for nearly 40 years. Now, its workers are lined up at unemployment offices, unsure how to pay next month's rent. And that's just the start. A dealership in rural Iowa reported that customer traffic dropped 47% in April after the shutdown made certain models unavailable. With inventory thinning and prices rising, dealerships are slashing hours, laying off staff, and in some cases, outsourcing vehicle repairs to cross-border shops in Mexico to save on costs. The local impact is devastating. Diners that fed plant workers every morning are now empty. Auto repair chains are running skeleton crews. In small towns, These jobs weren't just paychecks, they were the lifeblood of entire communities. And as Ford reroutes parts sourcing overseas, domestic shipping firms are also bleeding. One Michigan-based logistics carrier laid off 80 drivers in a single day after losing 2 Ford contracts worth over $12 million. Every layer of the ecosystem, from parts to people, is cracking under pressure. And the worst part? It's happening fast. Too fast for states to react, and far too fast for workers to recover. What's happening to Ford isn't just a series of bad decisions, it's the collapse of an entire industrial model built over decades. Since the 1990s, the North American auto industry has operated on a finely tuned balance. Canada provided precision manufacturing and high-tech R&D. Mexico handled cost-effective labor for complex assemblies. And the United States dominated final production, distribution, and volume. This three-country ecosystem, born out of NAFTA, allowed Ford, GM, and others to build affordable vehicles at scale while staying competitive with Asia and Europe. But Trump's tariff policy disrupted that formula overnight. A 25% tariff on foreign-made vehicles and parts doesn't just hit imports. It undermines the very integration that U.S. automakers depend on. Suddenly, Canadian-made engines or Mexican-built transmissions are treated as if they were coming from China. And that changes everything. Parts that once flowed seamlessly across borders are now held up, taxed, or rerouted, increasing costs at every stage. Supply chains that took decades to optimize are now being ripped apart in months. It's not just inefficient, it's dangerous. Ford can't simply rebuild that system inside U.S. borders. The factories, the labor pools, the vendor networks, they don't exist at scale. And even if they did, the costs would be astronomical. This isn't about bringing jobs home. It's about forcing companies to choose between survival and nationalism. And history offers a chilling reminder. In 2002, steel tariffs imposed by President Bush led to over 200,000 job losses, more than the entire U.S. steel workforce at the time. Now, the auto industry is on the same path. Only this time, the fall could be even steeper. The backlash isn't just coming from laid-off workers or angry dealers. It's now echoing from places no one expected. Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario and a conservative ally to many in Washington, stunned reporters last week when he called the U.S. auto tariffs economic vandalism. In his words, this is sabotage, not against foreign powers, but against the very people who build our cars. And he's not alone. In a rare public move, Tesla CEO Elon Musk, known for avoiding political crossfire, posted a sharp statement on X. Ford's response is logical. You can't build EVs competitively while tariffs punish every cross-border component. But perhaps the biggest surprise is coming from inside the unions themselves. Younger members of the United Auto Workers UAW are openly rebelling. In Toledo, dozens of rank-and-file workers staged an unsanctioned walkout, furious at what they see as silence from UAW leadership. One worker carried a cardboard sign that read, "Fired by tariffs, betrayed by silence." The UAW has long been a political power broker, but now it's divided. And that division is widening. Even within Ford, senior engineers are leaking frustration to the press. Anonymous quotes in automotive news describe internal meetings as tense, panicked, and filled with pressure to prepare for the next hit. Boardrooms are no longer confident. Union halls are no longer united. And the message from the ground is clear. If this is what America First looks like, it's starting to feel like everyone loses. The layoffs may seem temporary. The closures may feel reversible. But industry insiders are warning, this is just the beginning. According to leaked internal strategy documents, Ford is considering exiting multiple U.S. market segments entirely by 2027, particularly sedans and entry-level EVs. Instead of building them domestically, the plan would shift development and assembly to Mexico and export the vehicles back into the U.S., assuming tariffs don't rise further. But here's where it gets worse. China has begun retaliating. Just days after Ford's shutdown announcement, Beijing imposed new tariffs on American-made pickup trucks and agricultural equipment. directly targeting Ford's F-Series as well as GM and John Deere. Exports to Asia are plummeting, and European markets are quietly pulling away from U.S. suppliers. According to Morgan Stanley, U.S. auto sales could drop by 20% over the next 12 months if the tariff structure holds. That's not a dip, that's an implosion. And it's not just about Ford anymore. Toyota has paused U.S. investments in hybrid component production. Honda raised prices across the board by 7%. Nissan has canceled U.S. pre-orders for its Mexico-built SUV line. The system is fracturing. A once seamless continent-wide supply chain is now a battlefield of rising costs, legal barriers, and vanishing trust. And the longer the tariffs last, the more permanent this realignment becomes. Because when companies redesign their future around instability, they don't rebuild the past. They leave it behind. Ford is still here. But for the first time in living memory, it's not standing tall, it's bracing for impact. And what's unraveling isn't just a business model. It's an identity, one built on the promise that American workers, American factories, and American companies would rise together. Now, that promise is fading. And it's not just because of automation or globalization. It's because of policies designed to protect, but that may be destroying the very thing they claim to save. The White House says the pain is temporary. Ford says the fight is necessary. But workers in Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana aren't reading press releases. They're reading pink slips. And that leads us to a question we all have to ask. Is this truly America first? Or is it the start of America alone? Let us know what you think in the comments. Are these moves just short-term adjustments, or are we watching the beginning of a permanent industrial exodus? If you value stories like this, the ones that dig deeper than headlines and hold power accountable, subscribe to the channel. We'll be here when the next factory goes quiet. Because the story isn't over. It's only getting louder.